Hi, welcome to the Believe Africa podcast, where we're having conversations that inspire, creating minds that revolutionize. I am your host, Cyril Awere. Today we have episode 2 on African Excellence Spotlight. We have with us Richard Akita. Richard is an author, an entrepreneur, and a life coach. And Richard has spent quite a bit of research on African excellence, and he's going to share with us his insights on this very, very important topic. Hello, right. So I'd like for us to welcome Richard. Richard is an author and also an entrepreneur and a life coach. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Cyril.
How are you today?
Doing better than good. Yourself?
I'm absolutely awesome. All the better for having you here with us.
Thank you.
It's really great. So, Richard, we're going to start with you giving us an introduction of yourself. And then you're going to also, what gave you the spark to develop an interest in this area of African excellence? Yes.
Okay. Well, I was fortunate to have been born in the UK, came back to Ghana, lived for about 17 years, and my parents sent me back.
Okay.
And that began to shape who I am today.
Right.
So as a life coach, you're looking at some of the challenging seasons in your life
Yes.
and seeing how best you can help others to navigate their challenges.
Right.
I've loved writing, even though I couldn't put a book together up until 2015. And I've written quite a lot of books. The latest book I've written is my childhood memoirs. And I'm now going to embark on some fiction.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Right. Looking forward to that.
Yes. And then for business, it's looking at the opportunities of how to impact. I say this not because I don't like money, but
That's a very honest admission.
yeah. But I heard Bishop Doug in the UK make this statement where he said, "Live your legacy before you leave your legacy."
Ah, yes. Live your legacy before you leave your legacy.
Yeah.
I've not heard that sentence.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that has been the drive. So as I was approaching that wonderful 40 age, I kept asking myself, what is it? What's the purpose? Why am I here?
Yes.
And it wasn't about the money. I was successful in what I was doing in the UK, but Ghana was calling out to me. And looking at what I had achieved, my wife and I had achieved in the UK, the idea is that, can we replicate it in Ghana? So African excellence became a drive.
Right.
And so we've been here since 2013. I spend about half my time here and then the other in the UK.
Okay.
But it's pushing the envelope,
Right.
challenging the narrative, and saying to people, it can be done.
Yes.
And so giving hope as well as giving direction
Yes.
for people to move forward.
Yeah.
So African excellence is one of the things that I'm enjoying at the moment
Sure.
in the programs that I run.
No, that's really encouraging, Richard. I think the what you say there about hope, I think that's such an important word, isn't it?
It is.
Because there's a large number of us that are generally pessimistic about the future, for Ghana, West Africa. It kind of doesn't seem like there is a light on the other side, does it? It's kind of, it's very, very, very blurry. And I also recognize that for a lot of generations, they have not seen any sign of this hope. It's kind of generally been, would you say?
They see the hope.
Right.
Those who have come and have stuck to it,
Yes,
have been able to make inroads.
Yeah.
It is very challenging.
Yeah. And
Because
there's very few too. Right?
Yeah.
Who,
Because what you're doing is you're not here to necessarily change the narrative, but you want to work with the narrative and then introduce another way.
Yeah, I so love that actually. Yes, because I think a lot of us think that we need to change it, we need to do whatever we can. But yes, you're right. We need to just find ways to adapt it, if you like. Yeah.
And even if we look at some of the religious organizations, when they were trying to infiltrate other countries, they just kept saying to them, hey, your worship is very similar to ours. So why don't you do this?
Right.
So it was a softly approach, and people buy into something when they are not being pressured to doing it.
Yes, that's true.
When they're able to see somebody live the life that they claim to be better, living it, even in the midst of challenges.
Yes.
So our consistency as changers, or those of us who aspire to see African excellence, means that we've got to keep pushing.
Yes.
Even when we're down, we've got to find a way to push ourselves. It's a lot of sacrifice, but I also believe that in the end, it'll be worthwhile.
Yes. I think there's a very famous Nelson Mandela quote. It always seems impossible until it's done.
That's right.
That's definitely what you're saying there, isn't it? But I also resonate with your journey, Richard. Having been born in the UK. Grew up here in Ghana, and then finding myself back in the UK. And I think those transitions help you to see the different perspectives, isn't it?
Yes, it does.
When you step out of it, or it helps you to think a bit more clearly.
What you think. Let me quickly share this. I had gone to the VAT office, and they asked me to come back in the morning.
Okay.
And based on my enthusiasm, I turned up at 8:30. So for me, the morning means early.
Yes.
And I sat there, waited and waited. And eventually I went to the gentleman. I said, I thought you wanted me to be here in the morning.
Yes.
And he said, sir, I have to remind you, the morning is still 11:59:59.
That's a good one.
So I've learned, you learned.
Yeah.
You've got to learn to be patient.
Yes.
And one of the key things that we are doing is we're not striving for perfection.
No, we're accepting mediocrity in a way.
We're pushing for excellence.
Yeah.
But as we start getting excellence, I believe gradually there'll be a pool of people doing things in excellence. That will then force the masses or encourage the masses to start adapting to some of the things that we're doing.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So let's dive into this topic around African excellence. What does it mean? Let's try and define it. What criteria do we use to define that this is someone who represents African excellence? Yeah,
African excellence comes from, I'll give this quote, and I say, deception's greatest flaw is arrogance.
Okay.
And one of the things that we find is we tend to import a lot of cultures, a lot of ideas, and there's nothing wrong in importing them, but we do not fit it to our template.
Right.
And to get African excellence, we need to understand who we are. We need to understand our history. We need to understand what we're striving for. So I may not be a Vodafone in the UK. I'm a Vodafone in Ghana. But what am I doing that represents that culture? And every organization has this culture that when you bring it to Ghana, and you are consistent, it helps. So we're looking at consistency, being able to say no.
Yes, that's true.
And it's quite a challenging thing. So saying no, as in it can be done. So going back to Nelson Mandela's quote, it looks impossible until it is done. So it is you saying, it can be done.
Right.
I may sweat a little bit. I may cry. But if we keep pushing, we will be able to get this. So even if we go back to our forefathers, our founding fathers, and we look at what they did, with all the things that they went through, they kept pushing for independence.
That's very true.
That was a goal.
Yeah.
And, every time I get the chance to listen to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's speech, where he talks about our independence is useless unless it frees or liberates all the other African countries.
Yes, he certainly had a much broader vision, didn't he? It wasn't, Ghana was just the starting point, yes.
So, Cyril, the question then is, what was he eating?
That's very true.
Because
and that's a very good question, by the way. What was his diet like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I haven't studied the man very well, but the little I know is that generation, one of the things I discovered is that generation read the dictionary as part of their curricula. So their vocabulary was, they will use one word, whereby I'm now trying to use 20 words to say the same thing.
Right.
And when they spoke in depth. They were able to cast a vision. So when you're talking about African excellence, are we able to cast a vision so much so that the people who catch that vision will be prepared to pay the price to get to that vision?
Isn't it?
Yes.
Paying the price, right? Yeah.
And it's also having the support system in place, because as each and every one of us, we leak. So you teach me something, I may forget, but it's just that consistency. Just keep pushing, pushing. So you've got all of that dream for an Africa.
Yes.
For Africa, for Africans. Let's look at our wonderful country. When I was younger, cocoa was our number one.
Yes.
We lost that to Ivory Coast.
Because we were number one before, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we were number one before.
And we've never been able to catch up. The closest we came to was when President Kufuor came in power and he pushed for the goal. We had a bumper harvest. But that was it.
Yeah.
It fizzled out. And it is...
Which is why, sorry to cut you, which is why you mentioned that important word, consistency.
Exactly.
Richard. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've got to keep saying to people, hey, we can do it. We have a lot of ease.
Yes.
We have a lot of things that we import. So it makes it easier for us, which sadly can make us a little bit lazy.
Yes.
If we look at the great inventions in Europe, America, and all of that happened during the stressful times.
Yes, this is very true, actually. Yes. Do you think that we've had it too easy then at some point?
No, we haven't had it too easy, but we have defaulted to complaining and not looking for solutions.
Okay, so it's a mindset.
Yeah.
I guess it goes back to the mindset, isn't it? Yeah. Because, I've always wondered, Richard, Africa is the richest continent in terms of resources.
That's right.
And yet we are the poorest. This is quite a fundamental question, isn't it? And yet there are other countries in Europe that have a lot less natural resources than a lot of African countries, and yet financially they are in a stronger position. Yeah, that's sorry, go ahead. Yes.
So in this excellence, there has to be discipline.
Discipline, right.
Because if I get into a position of power, a position of authority, and I think of bettering myself, then I am not going to help the nation.
No.
And there are a few people that seems to be pushing the envelope to say, hey, let's get this done. So we look at all the natural resources we have.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's quite a painful thing, because even if I refer to bauxite, where a couple of years ago, as a nation, we took a loan on an unmined bauxite reserve.
Oh, right. Okay, that's not a very
to make
strategy.
Roads. Hold on. Making roads was something Kwame Nkrumah introduced. So it appears that most of the political giants, when they come in, the agenda is make roads.
Make roads, yeah.
I can understand the benefit of it, but can we change the narrative?
Is it to do with prioritization then, do you think?
Yes, it is.
Is this prioritization, right?
It is.
Because maybe there are some other elements of the economy that could be given more attention.
Yeah.
And thereafter we would have that flexibility even to do the roads. Yeah.
I mean, let's look at KNUST. We have fantastic brains in Ghana. When I first came and I raised my hand and say I didn't have that much hope, I used to think, oh yeah, I left Ghana 30 years ago. I'm coming back to Ghana, and I bet you it's the same old. And then I met people, and I had to, if I use the word repent, I had to change my mind, because we're seeing people who were excelling.
Right.
So I refer to KNUST as an example. Currently, we're going through this ECG crisis, but the ECG crisis, we've been going through that since...
It's been quite some time, hasn't it?
Since the 70s.
Yes.
Can we challenge students to come up with solutions? Can we challenge students to come up with automobiles? We've got Kantanka, who's doing a reverse engineering.
Yes, of course, yes. Kantanka's,
But it's reverse engineering.
It would be so nice, wouldn't it, if Kantanka was driven by all our government officials? That would be so awesome, wouldn't it?
It will be.
I mean, yeah.
But you're making them richer.
Making who richer?
You're making Kantanka richer. So I will not want to see them prosper. So I would rather import. And
I just realized what you just said there. The penny just dropped.
Yeah. So it's looking at the natural resources that we have.
Yeah.
And I have met some fantastic young people only waiting for the opportunity. A couple of years ago, I think it's a couple of years ago, there were some girls from Methodist school who started making paper out of plantain, the stock.
Right.
Where are they now?
There are pockets of innovation like that, aren't there?
And
around.
Couldn't we have had some venture capitalists? Couldn't we have had some, even if it's a government? I try not to use government to do everything, because the government's role is to create the opportunity for business to thrive.
Yes.
So imagine if these young girls were given the opportunity to move their paper mill, because we have lots of plantain waste.
Yes.
And they're making paper with it. Can you imagine how much our import on paper would reduce? But once again, it is almost a them and against us. So
what do you think, Richard? Why do we have this fixation with importing?
If I knew the answer
it's a
to
bit
that,
more complicated.
I think so.
Yeah, because it's sort of, everyone knows it doesn't make sense, but it's happening. Yeah. I mean, most people we ask would say that it doesn't make sense to import if we can create it within, produce it in the country. So I often wonder, in that case, why is it still happening then?
Possibly a question of pride. Maybe we're not proud of our own produce.
Okay. So it could be the quality, maybe.
Not the quality. You see, those who started, let's say, processing rice, they will get it wrong. But you give them feedback. They work on it. They refine it. They refine it until they get it right.
Okay.
We like perfumed rice. We like this. So all the variety of rice that we can import from other countries, we do that. Ghana is growing its own rice. Can you imagine? I've heard that a lot of the street vendors tend to use the local rice.
Okay.
But can you imagine if there is an incentive that would push this local rice to the fore and get it out there?
Absolutely.
And that would then reduce our forex expenditure. I mean, I talk about that, and let me also raise Blue Skies.
Yes, Blue Skies is yes. In terms of African brands that are international.
You've got Blue Skies who, I mean, in the UK, Marks and Spencer's is known for having quality food.
Yeah, they have a very strict criteria.
Exactly.
Before a product appears on the shelf, they have a very strict criteria.
But Blue Skies are able to do it.
Okay.
They fly out wherever they need to fly out every single day. There are juices and everything else. Why can't we replicate this for other organizations?
Yes, similar model. Blue Skies started when? What year? Do you remember?
Oh, you're testing my memory.
Yeah. But it's quite some time, isn't it?
Yes.
It's definitely before 2010,
I think so.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely before 2010. Because when I came to Ghana, I think Blue Skies was quite big then in Ghana. Yeah.
So why can't we copy that model? So the point is, sometimes as I interact with people, we don't like sharing our successes.
That's the challenge with collaboration.
Yeah. So when you look at the Asians and how they collaborate, when I lived in the UK, there was a corner shop, and Siam, he owned that shop, brought his nephews and his nieces, and in a space of 15 years, every single one of them had a corner shop.
This is how they,
and that's how they replicate.
Yes.
The unity amongst them, and they kept pushing that. We don't. I don't know Blue Skies.
The current
the corporate social responsibility and what they're doing, but all I'm saying is, if we can take that as a case study, how can we then bring that to the small organization like myself who wants to grow? How can I become international?
I'm so with that, Patrick, because I think we need some Coca-Colas of Africa.
Yeah.
We need some brands which are known globally, that of African origin.
Yes.
And it should be possible, do you think?
It is possible.
Yeah.
It is possible. I mean, I run a mentoring program for boys and girls and teens. And I have got some children who come on from the UK, some from the United States. And it's just pushing the agenda for change, working on soft skills, making sure that the children understand.
Yes.
And this season, we're going to be talking about peak performance. I'm challenging a 7-year-old to start dreaming of 10, 20 years from now.
And dreaming big even, right?
Bigger than me.
Yes.
So when they say to me, I'm going to be a pediatrician, I say, okay, fine. That's great. Become a consultant.
Yes.
I'm going to do law. That's great. Become judge, chief justice.
Chief justice. Yeah.
So you keep raising the bar.
Yeah.
Because at this age, they're so malleable, but they can dream and they can run after it. You and I, Cyril, we had certain dreams.
Of course.
And then life knocked us backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And imagine if we give the support system to the youth to achieve that dream. Africa is at the verge of being a superpower.
Oh, it certainly is. And that's why we need to maintain this momentum.
That's right.
Yes, that's exactly why we have this podcast, Believe Africa. But yeah, you're spot on. And we're going to have the largest, youngest population in the world.
We do.
The African continent. So the opportunities are just immense, aren't they?
The average age is 18.
Yeah.
So I've already pushed the bucket. I'm sort of like, it's not just a gray hair anymore. It's my numbers are not suitable. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that also the fact that we have the culture, I think, is a very key part, isn't it? Yes.
How do we perhaps we need to do a critique of our cultural norms. And then say which elements of our culture is actually helping us to create these, building these young people into becoming excellent,
That's right.
Representing African excellence, and which elements is actually drawing us back, not helping us so much. And I'm sure we can maybe find
we can.
Yeah.
I will use my personal experience because growing up here, I learned how to say yes, please, no, please.
Right. I quite like the yes, please. That's very interesting, isn't it? I'm being sarcastic.
My granddaughter has a song by Bino and Fino. It's a Nigerian cartoon for children. It's been going for...
Oh, yes, I think I've heard of this, yeah.
And, they sing in the African accent.
Yes, it's awesome, though.
And you can see the innovation.
Yeah.
So, going into retail management... When an elderly person did something wrong, I struggled to reprimand them because I was told you don't speak to an elder person, you don't tell them off. An elder person is always right. So it took me, I had to have a shift of removing the Ghana in me and trying to be more European and assert myself to be able to deal with these things. And so we have those little things that we may not necessarily see the impact, but it has got a negative impact.
Well, it does have a negative impact for sure. I think if working in Europe, coming across with, as you describe it, that sort of it would be seen as being too timid. Actually,
that's right.
Not being assertive enough,
that's right.
Right? So it's really important that we recognize that these elements of our cultural norms are actually not helping us, as you describe it, isn't it? And find ways of adjusting. I think
that's right.
As your advice, we use the word adjust instead of change, right?
Because adjusting, like any car, if you're driving and going to overtake, you don't turn the full steering. It's just a little turn. Small paradigm shifts. And if we're able to do that, the respect is there. Because a lot of people, when they meet with African students, who come across as respectful, initially celebrate it. But after a while, they shun it because they think you can't think for yourself.
Right. This is the misunderstanding that happens, isn't it? Yes.
And we then struggle because we're seeking approval. As a retail manager, you're giving a budget. You're giving a team of people you're working with. And the stock comes in. So if it's stock loss, you're responsible for it. And you're going to get to a place where you've got to ask yourself, okay, how can I change this? How can I keep on top of my sales?
Yes.
That's not time for me to start questioning, oh, maybe this. And it made me take some bold steps. And the beauty is, I took some steps that went horribly wrong.
Oh, that's a failure, right?
No.
Oh, failure.
It's a learning opportunity.
I know, but we don't welcome failure very well.
No, we don't.
As you know, Richard. Yes.
We don't. So my area managers, my company was, okay, fine. Richard, what did you learn from this? And I remember the first time they asked me this, I sat there and I had to really, hold on, I failed. And you're asking me what? I thought I was going to get sacked.
Right, yes.
And they said, what did you learn from this? Then I had to go through that thinking process of saying, okay, I started analyzing. I started looking at the things I could have done better. And I took lessons from that. And they said, okay, don't do it again, but go and manage a store. And that one incident propelled me to be one of the best. I know we're talking and there's nobody here to challenge that, but
I can trust you on that, Richard.
Thank you. So it really helped me to understand the power of being able to make a decision and follow it through.
Yes. And I think, and you might be aware of this, Richard. You know, there are some organizations in UK, US who actually reward teams that make mistakes. Of course, the idea is that they come out with what they've learned from it, as you said. That's the key question, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So this is what happened, but what did we learn from it? And they get rewarded for it.
That's right.
And sometimes when I mention this during workshops, they're looking at me blank thinking, really?
You can't afford that mistake.
Because normally you'll be out of the organization,
exactly.
right, as soon as that happens.
Exactly.
But smart organizations recognize how important failure is. And it's the same thing with innovation, right? We talked about innovation earlier. And, you know, how does the culture bit impact?
I mean, for innovation, let me use a chassis as one of the, I mean, I just take my hat off.
Yes, incredible.
Because if you look at what they've achieved, I had the opportunity to work with some of the freshers when they came on board. And, you know, as a fresher, they were challenging them to come up with business solutions.
Yes.
You and I, okay, let me say, I was told, wait till you're 40 and then start your business.
Yeah, that was me too. Yeah.
But here you have teenagers barely coming out of, pardon the phrase, nappies at the age of 18, 19, and they're being challenged to come up with business solutions.
Yes.
So today, a chassis can boast and say that a lot of their students that come out do get employment because they are not trained to think within the box. They are trained to think that there's no box.
There's no box even. That's true. Yeah.
And that helps. And if you imagine, we do that with Legon, we do that with KNUST, we do that with UCC. The potential is scary. And because it's scary, I'm not sure if that could be the reason why we're not encouraging it.
Yes.
10 years from now, okay, 20, 30 years from now, one of the things I also struggle with is our children not learning their language.
The language is important.
So I have children who speak French. And even though we are an island amongst the Franco nations, I don't speak French. I'm not proud of it, but I don't.
Yeah.
I speak English, I speak Ga, I speak Twi.
Yes.
I can communicate with people. And our children are growing up, and we think the idea of importing speaking English at home, there's nothing wrong with it. But when the child loses that language,
it's the heritage, isn't it?
Thank you. So you got the heritage, you've got the proverbs, all those adages that makes sense. And I look at our wonderful cousins in Nigeria. I don't know how many Nollywood movies they produce every day, but go on YouTube. Those guys have found a way to make money. Yes.
But they are very proud of their heritage.
Yes.
Yes, they do. Yes.
They would wear their, as they say, they wear their attire.
Yes, that's attire. That's very true. Yeah, I like the way you say it too. The language as well. I know lots of Nigerian friends whose kids, they speak.
That's right.
They speak the language of their kids. And they are very proud of their English accent.
Oh yes,
which is, of course, is not very far from the English accent.
Oh yes,
right? But they are okay with it. So
because of
it's not their mother tongue.
Inner pride that assertiveness,
Yeah.
looking at Africa as a solution.
Mm.
And when we can get our culture, we can get to a place where our children start loving Ghana,
Yes.
thinking Ghana.
Yes.
I have an affirmation I share with children. I say to them, I will impact my country.
Right. Right.
I start here first.
Yes. I say,
and then I move forward. I say, I start in Ghana. I go to West Africa. I go to Africa before I say Europe and America.
Yeah.
Because when you learn to impact your community here, you start creating things.
Yeah. Yeah.
We spoke about blue skies. The methodology for farming, people are using that method. So they never run out of mangoes. Literally, people are farming and selling it to them.
Yes. Yes.
So we need to get that culture. We need to tweak it a little bit, take out the things that we don't want. After all, when you're pounding fufu and there's a knot in it, you don't throw the whole thing away.
No, this is
you just take the knot out and you continue pounding.
Yeah.
So it's understanding how we are able to identify some of our mistakes and say, okay, fine, this is not working. And we need to be honest with ourselves. And if we are then honest with ourselves, we're then able to move forward because we then can bring the pride of Africa.
Yes, yes. I think, that pride is what we need to maintain, isn't it? I certainly try to do that. When I run workshops internationally, it's one of the first questions that I ask. I say that, okay, I'm originally from Ghana. Usually I'm sort of coming from the UK, but I would say that I'm originally from Ghana. Does anyone know where Ghana is? Very often I'll get some, and I'll explain where it is and things like that. So I think it's good for more of us to make mention.
Definitely.
Yeah. And, we recognize that there are some parts of every country that is not so great.
Of course.
I think, internationally, a lot of people have been misinformed about, what goes on in African countries. So we're not seen as credible enough to be made mention of. But there's lots and lots of positive things happening across the continent.
There is.
On the subject of positive things, Richard, which industries do you think are emerging as has got potential that is really representing Africa?
Well, the music industry has made a lot of strides.
It certainly has, isn't it? Yeah.
And I feel if we start focusing on manufacturing, I mentioned Kantanka earlier. If we can start focusing, because whatever we do has to create jobs.
Yes.
And for the young man out there, the young lady out there who is not working or they finish university and they can stay home 5 years, 7 years before they get a job. If we can create the opportunity for them to apply themselves, that would help us. And I think if you look at a lot of the successes in Europe and America, manufacturing was what drove them to a place where they are now, we call them superpowers or first world. But in my book, there's no first or third world.
No.
We have the same opportunity and we need to take advantage of it. So if we're proud of who we are, not arrogant, proud of who we are and prepare to sacrifice, because it may appear that people want things very quickly.
Yes.
But if we are prepared to pay the price.
You're speaking to the very young African, by the way, wanting things in an instant, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so pay attention.
Honestly, if we are able to say, hey, if you want to be a multi-billionaire, if that's the goal, Dangote did it. What's different from him and you?
Yes. And they all started from somewhere.
Exactly.
Right? From humble beginning.
So you will start from humble beginning. You do not despise humble beginning. So you start and you work. You push and you keep pushing. You keep pushing. You keep pushing. The beauty about change, as James Clear puts it, he says, change eventually will converge.
Yes.
But it doesn't give you the timing.
No.
So the little things you're doing
have to keep going.
It's just going to, all of a sudden, it's going to converge. And people are going to go, where did you come from?
Yeah.
Let me use this illustration.
But it's interesting you say that, Richard. People only see when you appear in the limelight, right? But not all the craziness that has happened before.
Yeah.
So there's this. You probably know of this success iceberg. I think it's worth mentioning this, by the way. If you check Google, look for an image for success iceberg, And it's very, very insightful. It's a very nice diagram, and it's showing the fact that I think, as you said, 80% is
80%
kind of, below sea
submerged.
level, right? And that 80% is filled with disappointment, difficulties, rejection, all the wonderful things that we don't like to experience.
That's right.
But that is the journey towards success, isn't it? Yeah.
You see, success can only be announced by failure.
Oh, that's deep. We don't like failure, right?
No, we don't.
Okay.
But failure will tell you you've arrived.
Yes.
Because if you keep at it, you'll make it work. So even as we look at the iceberg, you've got the unconscious mind.
Yes.
We spend the first formative years of our children saying, no, don't do it.
Yes.
Watch TV.
Yeah.
So we do all of those things. And there's a statistics that says that before a child turns about 18 months, they would have heard on average 150,000 no's.
Especially don't take risks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, don't go there. That's a bit dangerous. Yeah. Don't do that. Yeah, you're right, actually.
I used to climb mango trees.
Yeah.
The tiger ants would chase us.
Yes.
So we came up with Sooth. You put the ashes on yourself, you climb. They still beat you, but we went up.
Yes.
Where's that? We used to make cars. We used to beat the tire. I mean, for the young ones, if you know what, we'll beat.
Oh, the tire. Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
we did. We created our own toys.
Toys. We did actually. Yeah.
But today, if it's
car tires,
PS5, PS6, whatever it is, everybody wants one for their child, and we have made a wonderful nation. A nation of people sitting behind a screen.
Yeah,
we're not interacting. And whilst there's nothing wrong in playing games, I will still encourage parents, allow the children to do things with their hands.
Nature.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I challenge children to have a vegetable patch. I'm going to show my age now. When General Ike Achampon was in power, he came up with Operation Feed Yourself.
Oh, yes, I remember that. So you're not that old, by the way.
Okay, thank you. So
just consolation.
Thank you. But I remember I did some tomato farm.
Yeah.
And during the drought season, that tomato farm was on I think an eighth of a plot.
Right. Okay.
And my family, my parents were so proud because it was working. Because of that, my dad felt I would go into Greek until I went to the UK. And then I decided I'll do piloting and then civil engineering and then...
so you've been around.
Aeronautical engineering. And none of those things were working. So I ended up in retail management.
Yes.
But can you imagine if we can teach the children how to grow stuff?
Yeah, I think agriculture's got a huge potential.
It does.
I mean, I do often wonder why we haven't embraced agriculture.
I don't know whether there's a research on this. So even as I say it, I'm saying with a caution that we use agriculture as punishment.
Okay.
So in the secondary school, children misbehave. You give them a cutlass, a machete, and tell them to go and weed.
Okay. Yes.
When they finish school, they will not They will not go back to that because they see it as
it's like a menial sort of thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And we promote the medicines, the law, the accountants, and all of that.
Yes.
And
ideally, you want to be sat in an office, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we think being in the office, you make money. And I remember on my daughter's graduation, the town crier said, "You spend 3 years learning this. Your start wage will be £21,000. However, a plumber is earning £60,000.
That's very true, actually. Yes.
So if you look at those things, we don't respect the artisans. But sometimes they don't give us reason to respect them. But if we can take pride, people go to vocational schools and we think they are not, they can't get excellence out of that.
Right.
And if we can push the excellence agenda, I strongly believe that maybe I may not see it, but it will happen.
Yeah. And the other point as well, Richard, is that the fact is that every single one of us on earth has got some excellence built in, right? It's just that some of us have not identified what that is yet. So we haven't been able to bring it to the fore.
Yeah.
Which is why you mentioned the importance of parenting and parents being able to nurture their kids
Yes.
so that excellence can be explored, right? Yeah. But everyone has some sort of excellence in them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And let me be a bit controversial with this. I have a nephew who, every time you give him a present, he will break it.
Okay.
You give him a car, he'll break it. In less than 30 minutes,
right.
he'll smash it.
Okay.
And the parents are getting frustrated. So I said to them, watch what he's doing.
Yeah.
Allow your frustration, cover that, watch what he's doing. And what that child was doing, he smashes it and tries to work out how to put it together.
Okay. Yes. That's
you and I will get the whooping, will get the being told off, being put in a room. Literally, so we stifle that creativity.
That's the innovation, stifling innovation right there too, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, creative thinking.
So I said to the parents, most probably he might do something with engineering.
Yes.
Just encourage him. I know it's painful, so buy cheaper toys.
Yeah, yes.
And allow him to do it. And then when he puts it together, praise him. Yeah, exactly. Acknowledge the effort he's put into it. Because today it might start with a toy car.
Yes.
And it could be
tomorrow's Tesla. Yeah, that's very true.
So we need to keep pushing this African excellence.
Yeah.
Those who have gone ahead of us have done their best. The clarion call is on all of us now.
Yes.
And it's not just yourself and myself doing the podcast, but every single African must rise and challenge the narrative and push the boundaries, push the envelope, challenge what we've been told.
Yes.
Africa is so rich.
Right.
And if we can learn to harness that, it would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's so inspiring, Richard. That really is inspiring. I think, I certainly hope that our listeners are listening very carefully, to what you're saying, especially the young, of course, because they are the future. We do have the challenges that we discussed about the culture. But of course, we encourage young people to find ways of navigating that, and helping the older ones to understand.
In navigating, we, the ones who have gone ahead of them, need to become mentors.
Yes.
We've gone to the nuclear family, where it's my wife, myself, and my children. My dad's era was my mom, himself, the children, extended family.
That's right. Yeah.
If we're able to harness that, then the adage of it takes two to give birth to a child, but it takes the village to raise the child.
Yes.
African excellence will manifest.
Yes. So we need to go back to that Ubuntu community.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. So I think we're speaking fundamentally to cultural norms, which we need to kind of look inwards and ask ourselves, are these cultural traits actually helping us or not? And find ways of, inspiring each other, really.
That's right.
To adapt. I think is what we're saying. Right?
Adapt and move forward.
Changing, yeah. Thank you so much, Richard. It's been wonderful having you on this podcast. And hopefully for our young ones, based on all this wisdom, nuggets of wisdom that Richard has shared with us. And we also look forward to your feedback, on the Believe Africa podcast, where let's, allow the conversations to flow. And when we have those conversations, we're in a position to create a better future.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to you joining us for the next episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channels, along with our social media platforms for any new offerings and engagements with you as listeners. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Thank you.